talking about the Baba Yaga.
This is a Slavic folklore. A key figure from Slavic folklore, the Baba Yaga certainly fulfills the requirements of the Wicked Witch. She lives in a house that walks through the forest of chicken legs and sometimes flies around in a giant mortar and pestle. She usually appears as a hag or a crone, and she is known in most witch-like fashions to feast upon children. However, she is also a far more complex character that suggests cunning, clever, helpful as much as a hindrance. She could indeed be the most feminist character in folklore. So enduring is the legend of Baba Yaga. The history of Yaga first appears in many Slavic and especially Russian folktales, with the earliest recorded written mention of her coming in 1755 as part of a discourse of Slavic folk figures in Mikhail V. Lomonosov's book, Russian's Grammar. Before that, she had appeared in woodcut art, at least from the 17th century, and they made regular appearances in books of Russian fairy tales and folklores. If you're a film fan, you might recognize the name from the John Wick film starring Keanu Reeves, in which the anti-hero is called Baba Yaga by his enemies, giving him the mysterious allure of an almost mythical boogeyman. Japanese animation legend Hayao Miyazaki uses her as the basis for the bathroom proprietor in his award-winning 2001 movie Spirited Away, and she also appears in music too. Modern Mussorgsky's 1874 suit pictures as an exhibition features a ninth movement called the Hut on Frau's legs. I'm sorry for butchering all these names, I'm sorry dogs. She might well be making an appearance on the small screen soon as well. Neil Gaiman used her in his Sandman comic for DC, the adaptation of which has just had its second season announced by Netflix. Gaiman also used her in the Books of Magic comic series, and the way he has deployed the character highlights Merle's, where she was helpful in Sandman. She is more of a baddie in Books of Magic. He tells BBC Culture he first encountered her age 6 or 7 when he read children's fantasy books The Dragon Sister and Timothy Travels by British writer Margaret Story, in which she appeared. Felt she was the most interesting of all the witches, and felt that way even more when I read some of the Russian stories in which she appeared. He says, she seems to have her own life outside of the stories, which so few fairy tale characters do. Into the Forest is edited by Linda Ryan, a writer and full-time professor of data science and visual analytics at Rutgers University. Is also the founder Into the Forest's publisher Black Spot Books, a small press dedicated to female horror writers. So how did an American end up fascinated by this Slavic myth? My Russian stepmother emigrated to the United States shortly after the fall of the Soviet Union, said Ryan. While most girls my age were growing up with nicely sanitized Disney version princesses, I preferred the story by Brothers Grimm, Charles Perrault, and Hans Christian Andersen, and of course in the book of Slavic fairy tales and folklore that talked of the Baba Yaga. In fact, the origins of her might go back far further than the 17th century. There's a school of scholarly thoughts that says she's a Slavic analog of the Greek deity Persephone, goddess of spring and nature. She certainly associated with the woods and forests and the wilderness of nature. The essence of her existence in many cultures and many stories, and symbolizes the unpredictable and untamable nature of female spirits of Mother Earth and the relationship of women to the wild, says Rhyme. What lifts her above the usual two-dimensional witches of folklore in her duality, sometimes as an almost heroine, sometimes as a villain, and her rich earthly evocation of womanhood, she still remains one of the most ambiguous, cunning, and clever women of folklore, says Rhyme. She commands fear and respect, and simultaneously awe and desire. I admire her carelessness and her independence, even her cruelty. And in a world where women are so often reduced to hazy blurs of inconsequence, she is a figure that reminds us that we are ferocious and untamable, and that such freedom often comes at a cost. A true outlaw? Izzy likens Baby Yagas to trickster characters from many mythologies, such as Norse god of mischief, Loki, or Coyote from Native American folklore. While she often plays a villain, she is also likely to offer assistance. For example, in Vasilisa the Beautiful, she helps free Vasila from the clutches of her evil step family, she says, and while Baba's dangerous to deal with, like many of those who operate on the shadowy side of the law in contemporary movies, she can as well prove herself invaluable in dangerous situations. In this way, she complicates the passive female nurturing role with a type of I'll do whatever the heck I want power that you ordinarily only see associated with men. You could say that the Baby Yaga crosses the wicked witch trope with the fairy godmother trope to create an ultimately far more unpredictable and powerful role than either of those. Izzy was born and grown up in northern China, and as a great deal of Russian literature was translated, my first exposure to the Baby Yaga was a Chinese cartoon I saw when I was very young. I remember this cartoon because I told my grandmother that Baby Yaga looked exactly like my big uncle. This made her laugh. Big uncle? Do not laugh. The trope of the mountain or forest crone or witch is a popular one across East Asia, mainly because the mountains are associated with great spiritual power and with hermit figures who decide to live life on their own terms, much like how Baby Yaga is very much her own woman. Yamamba, who is strikingly similar to her, she too is more portrayed as having repulsive physical features and a taste for children. She is also moral ambiguous, alternatively described as a monster cannibal or agent of change and transformation, and a guardian of heroes. For Linda Ryan, the concept of a woman-centric horror anthology came from the idea of Baby Yaga's theme book, but Great Witch of the Forest exerted her influence. I wanted the anthology to feature the voice of a woman around the world who were unafraid to tell her story, to tap into their own wilderness and wickedness, and in that way I feel like Baba Yaga came to me as a muse for the anthology, she explained. What was perhaps most surprising was the readiness with which contributors took to the task and the resonance that Baba carries across the world. She truly is an universal character, and I was amazed at the responses from women around the world who united their voice with her. The story of the house explores one of the unique facets of the Baby Yaga's myth, her ramshackle cottage that walks on chicken legs. Recounting its creation and construction, I was just charmed thinking of the little chicken legs on this big old house. This directly led me to want to write about the house as well. I had just came off translating the shadow book of Jayun, a collection of 18th century Chinese weird tales. It's filled with fox spirits, Tabatin, red hat, black magic, and other flavors of shamanism, as well as stories of empowering animals and weird metamorphoses. This inspired the atmosphere I wanted to create in the story of a house and its theme. She may hide herself in the woods, but she's watching and she is remembering, she says. Alright guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. I love y'all so much for showing me all the love and actually watching the videos. I appreciate you guys. I know I might not be the best reader in the world, but I do my best. I love y'all. Stay safe, and I will see you in the next video.